Today's episode has one job: make quantum safety migration decision obvious to you. Post-quantum is not a debate topic anymore, it is a survival constraint. If assets do not migrate to a post-quantum safe execution environment, one of the two outcomes will win. Either they go to zero economically because collateral status, liquidity, and distribution shut down, or they go to zero operationally because keys can be forged once signatures, cryptography can be forged, and assets can be stolen. So the key sentence that I will repeat until it's impossible to miss is that Ethereum assets can migrate to EternaX and become PQ safe on day one. Bitcoin liquidity will be able to migrate to EternaX and be traded under full PQ safety control on day one. So that's the bucket 2, the installed base migration. The bucket 1, was we discussed in the last episode, was issuance. Minting new stablecoins and new assets, RWAs, have to be PQ native day one. So bucket 2 is actually bigger at the moment. Trillions already exist on chain under legacy cryptography assumptions. So today we will do 3 things in this episode. One is quantify the already existing installed base. 2, prove why migration is forced by market structure, not hype. And 3, prove why EternaX is the best destination because it makes PQ safety compatible with market speed throughput.
Yeah, Daria, thanks for the snapshot of what is going to come in the episode. But, it's still, let's quantify the numbers, Daria. Like, what is the installed base that you're talking about? The top 100 settlement snapshot. What is it? Just give us some numbers.
Well, that's very easy. The top 100 settlement snapshot represents currently about $3 trillion, and it is very concentrated. So Bitcoin alone in its settlement holds about $1.8 trillion, which is roughly 60% of all crypto. Second comes Ethereum. It's about 450 billion, which is roughly 15% of all crypto, and then everything else that's multi-chain and split between all of the other assets is about 300 billion, which is like 9%, driven very heavily by stablecoins. So this matters because the migration is not about individual tokens. It is also about where value is authorized and settled.
Got it, Daria. So basically what you're saying is that the 60% of the 3 trillion market of crypto today is just sitting on Bitcoin. And then again, the second biggest is 15%, which is Ethereum, and 9% to 10%, which is just, related to the stable coins and RWA, which we have already discussed in the previous episode. That is, sitting on in the multi-chain settlements. So what you are trying to say is that if one part of, the major part of the migration is going to come from Bitcoin and Ethereum ecosystems. And when we say Ethereum, it is largely not just Ethereum, but Ethereum EVM compatible ecosystems and, layer 2s and DeFi coins and everything. So this is great. Thanks for highlighting that, Daria. But, what has anything happened in the last 7 days, which you think has become critically relevant for the post-quantum readiness of the projects?
Well, I would say that the shift is mostly like psychological and operational here. There has not been, to my knowledge, a new proof to like a cryptographically relevant quantum computer of existing. What has really changed is awareness and posture of major players. They are now treating post-quantum safety as a multi-year migration problem rather than academic research problem anymore. The major signals for the past week is Ethereum Foundation posture shift. The coverage reports that Ethereum Foundation has created a separate team. They have elevated post-quantum security as priority. They are going to be investing more resources into it and connected to execution roadmap and actually bringing post-quantum signatures to mainnet and addressing migration. Then Wall Street analysts also note that Bitcoin quantum risk is real but distant, but the migration of Bitcoin existing assets is a 2-year problem, at least. So importantly, we move the PQ safety from the category of risk management to mitigation, actually planning operationally. Then yesterday, Galaxy Digital has shifted their posture. On an earnings call, Mike Novogratz has addressed quantum fears very explicitly, emphasizing that upgrades need to be feasible, and there is governance constraint and there is operational constraint that need to be worked around starting today. So the key is not whether he's like bullish or bearish. The key is that quantum is now boardroom discussable and is now becoming a real pain for people up high that are actually managing all of these risks, that are actually going to be blamed if something goes haywire. So the industry is now converging on a threat model. So the industry discourse is sharpening around the practical crypto attack service, which are like key theft via broken signatures, especially where public keys are exposed, not like quantum mining of Bitcoin, but actually like stealing UTXOs. The urgency is not coming from a breakthrough of like a research paper in a quantum computer. The urgency is coming from the realization that the migration program starting, and it's very, very long, and it's politically, culturally, and institutionally hard.
Makes sense, Daria. I think this was very, very comprehensive. I think a few key takeaways would be that Galaxy Digital has, kind of highlighted the need of quantum fear, basically, that acknowledged the quantum fears in their earnings calls. And this is, a real big deal, because when this happens, it means that people's profits are being impacted because of quantum fear. And that means that you will lose money if you are not quantum safe. So this is, highly critical time in the crypto space that I understand from your statements. But can you make it more blunt, Daria? Why is migration now required to be a forced migration, and now not why it can, might happen, or it will happen at some time?
Because the signature fragility that comes from quantum risks actually discounts the asset. It's basically a credit downgrade. So the forced signance becomes mechanical. First, collateral haircuts rise. Then, legacy chain collateral will get discounted and drop the borrowing power on it. Second, margin requirements will rise because initial margin and maintenance will go up, leverage will collapse, and volume will leave. 3, market makers will then widen spreads and cut their inventory, thinning liquidity, degrading price discovery, increasing volatility, which would in turn push more haircuts. Then, after all of that, custody and exchanges will restrict distribution, they will have warnings, they will have product limitations, they will risk of delisting, they will have stricter withdrawal controls, they will lower the limits of daily withdrawals and monthly withdrawals, even for big players. Then issuers will try to round around this risk. So stablecoins and RWAs will logically, rationally trend to pick safer rails that do not have that vulnerability, even if distribution is bigger on the vulnerable side. That will drain economic gravity from the legacy domains if there is a faster and safer alternative. And the end state of all of it is what I call actually existentiable. If a token cannot be used as collateral and cannot retain liquid markets and distribution, its price will go to zero. Well, separately then, if signature security fails in practice and keys can be forged, even selectively, assets can get stolen, which is also zero. That is why the migration is not just nice to have. It is a survival path. And yes, you may say, oh, quantum computer is not coming for the next 5 years, but it's going to take us 5 years to migrate. So we better start today.
Makes sense, Daria. I think absolutely. I think the migration is a bigger challenge, and this has been acknowledged by many projects. And most of the projects, L1s, especially in the space, are not even considering it right now, and hence they will be left behind. And the token holders of those projects will have no recourse. Their token will go to zero. It will go to drains, and they can't do anything about that unless until they migrate to a PQ safe chain, which is EternaX, where they can, have their token safe and keep the price as well of the token maintained, and essentially, enjoy the perks of that asset that they have, I would say, nurtured for so long. So one thing that you have made is very clear, and if I have to put it very simply, you are saying something like a risk analysis, and you are saying that the risk assessment of tokens will now be very much dependent upon the PQ safety infrastructure of those tokens. And this is something very related to credit ratings. If you are PQ safe in the best environment, you get a AAA rating. That means you are best suited for investment purposes. And if you are not in that environment, then you get, triple C, D, and those kind of ratings, which, just make your asset non-investable essentially. So this is more of a parallel that I can draw for our listeners, but this is the future that you are basically highlighting too. So if you say, you know you say the promise cleanly, what happens when people migrate to EternaX or migrate their assets to EternaX? What is the promise that EternaX is delivering to them?
Well, the promise that we have, and it's not just a theoretical promise, it is a practical promise, that it is that Ethereum assets can migrate to EternaX and become PQ safe on day one. And Bitcoin liquidity can migrate to EternaX and be traded under full PQ safe control on day one. And like any EVM compatible collateral can do this too. Once they are migrated, the day-to-day activity can happen inside EternaX on the DeFi venues and be PQ safe. PQ safe transfers, PQ safe trading, collateral, liquidation, settlement workflows, stablecoin, tokenized assets, all of that PQ safe guaranteed by the protocol. This is not just a roadmap, it's an execution domain shift, and we are able to do that because we're not just replacing a signature with another existing like post-quantum signature. We have designed the protocol around the primitives that allows us to achieve high performance while being post-quantum safe, which is a very critical distinction because there is some tokens right now in the market that tell that they are post-quantum safe, but their TPS is like 10.
Absolutely, Dari. I think the ages of 10 TPS, the ages of NFT trading, and those things are gone. The infrastructure and the blockchain is moving to the market speed infrastructure, and I think that infrastructure cannot just stand on the low TPS infrastructure which is coming from the PQ adoption by different L1s. But one thing that you have highlighted very clearly here is that on EternaX, your wallets are PQ safe, your transfers are PQ safe, your trading, that is your perp, is PQ safe, your DEX is PQ safe, your collateral is PQ safe, your liquidation is PQ safe, your settlement workflows is PQ safe. So I mean, there's a lot of post-quantum security, that comes in from the infrastructure itself. And the core part is that you don't have to worry about migration, because we help in easing that migration on EternaX. So all your Ethereum compatible and Ethereum assets can, migrate to EternaX day one and become PQ safe, and Bitcoin can migrate to EternaX and be traded under full PQ safe control on day one. So I think this is a very clear claim, Daria. I would love you to explain, how Ethereum migration is going to happen on EternaX.
Well, yeah, Ethereum's core problem in terms of quantum is authorization. So if an attacker one day can forge signatures, which is elliptic curve signatures, they will be able to authorize transfers of ETH, but not just ETH, also all of the ERC20 tokens and anything on top, because ERC20 transfers are ultimately authorized by like the same account model that Ethereum has. So migration is conceptually very straightforward. You just move the asset into the execution environment that is compatible with the EVM, where account authorization is post-quantum safe immediately. So just bridge, simple bridge. The asset then will be able to trade normally under the security that is post-quantum safe without having to wait for Ethereum Foundation and their multi-year ecosystem-wide signature migration. So that gives you a head start, basically.
So I think what you're basically saying is you lock the assets in a PQ safe environment on Ethereum with EternaX, and then what you mint on EternaX is a PQ safe environment, a PQ safe token, and in a PQ safe environment. So what happens is that basically it protects you on two sides. One is on the Ethereum itself. It protects from the post quantum threat. And on EternaX, you already have a native PQ safety. So what you'll be able to do is, basically trade freely with, safe wallets and post-quantum safe trading and all those things. Makes sense, Daria. Like, let's shift on the Bitcoin, Daria, Bitcoin piece. How are you basically shifting it on the Bitcoin can be shifted to EternaX in a PQ safe environment?
Right. Bitcoin is slightly more tricky because of its absent account model. It's UTXOs. So to be precise, we don't claim that native like Bitcoin chain becomes end-to-end PQ safe until Bitcoin developers itself adopt PQ spending paths. What we do claim, and it's a relevant economic claim for people who actually hold it, is that Bitcoin liquidity that is actively participated in the market, that's not dormant, can migrate to EternaX via the same sort of vault structure with locking and minting that can be traded and settled actively on a PQ safe rails inside EternaX. So markets are moving the activity layer first. That is how liquidity that is critical can survive transitions without waiting for like perfect origin chain upgrades that will still gotta have to come.
Got it, Daria. So basically what you're saying is that, like, with Bitcoin as well, with such a legacy chain that we have, there are challenges to the Bitcoin ecosystem because they are very slow, and the ecosystem is very dormant in that sense. Even in those conditions, we at EternaX have a solution for the Bitcoin holders to bring their Bitcoin liquidity migrated to EternaX in an environment which is PQ safe, and they can put their Bitcoins to the test. And the second is we try to provide, Bitcoins PQ safety to some extent, not 100%, but to at least some extent, so that we can give them a comfort of PQ safety on the Bitcoin chain itself, unless they take their time to migrate completely. So I mean, that's some sort of ease and some sort of comfort that we are providing to $1.8 trillion Bitcoin market. This is huge, Daria. I think this is something that our listeners would be excited to hear about more, and we'll share more in the coming. So, Daria, the last question: why is EternaX the best home and not just another PQ chain? Why are we, EternaX, the home for post-quantum?
Because when we set out to build EternaX, we realized that there is a big trade-off to actually being future-proof for the market, and being future-proof requires you to be post-quantum safe. And with all the existing post-quantum safe signatures and cryptography, there is a very big trade-off that any existing chain is facing, and it's even before migration. Migration is operational, but we are talking like hard numbers of mass and TPS and consensus. So existing classical signatures that are ellipticars that are used on almost all of the blockchains are 64 bytes, which means your transaction is consisting of like there is your transaction data, who you're sending to its contract, you're calling your public key, and your signature. And your signature is just a small part of it. Then the next best PQ safe scheme that projects like Solana and Sui are considering, and Ethereum using, is Falcon 512. That signature is 666 bytes. That is 10 times bigger than existing classical signature. Practically, that means that your transaction consists 90% of your signature. That is cutting your TPS on like Solana and Sui by like 70%, just by the size of it. And we're not accounting for computation, and we're not accounting for like consensus overhead, just user signatures. That is insane. That is not a trade-off. This should be accepted. That's why we work towards actually not having to make the trade-off and introducing something a lot better than that. Falcon is like the smallest available currently PQ signatures that other projects can use. The second one is Dilithium, which is a hash-based signature, and it's 2000 bytes, 2 kilobytes. The next after that is Sphinx, which 8 kilobytes. Those are insane numbers that no chain today is able to support. So everybody is just faced with this trade-off. Do we sacrifice TPS, or do we sacrifice PQ safety and make timelines smaller? So what we did, And thanks to our amazing chief scientist, Dr. Frank, we invented a novel post-quantum scheme that will be published in the due time, is currently under peer review, that is almost close to classic elliptic curve signatures. It is currently less than 200 bytes in the size. It is like 4 times smaller than Falcon, and its verification cost is like 200 times faster than Falcon because it uses a very different mass. It doesn't use lattices, it doesn't use hash trees, it's information theoretic signatures. So we now, with this primitive, do not have a choice to be PQ or not PQ. Our choice is very easy. We make PQ and we tell that we are the only high-performant PQ. That's it. So your choice then, as a token holder of any token, is whether your PQ plan is actually adoptable at market speed. Because post-quantum is a cost model. It's not a checkbox. You're like, okay, now I'm post-quantum and everything else stays the same. No, the constraint that everybody's missing kind of in their discussion is that post-quantum cryptography imposes a very hard throughput tax on existing chains, be that Solana, Sui, Ethereum, even worse for Bitcoin. Because in Bitcoin, if you add that big of a signature, you basically stole the chain. It becomes like 2 TPS. At chain scale, the signature footprint, if you imagine every user also having to migrate in first window, your chain, the only thing it's doing is just moving people's money from their own wallets to their own new wallets. No DeFi activity can happen. So that signature footprint converting into 3 hard taxes. One is propagation tax. The more bytes per transactions means slower block propagation and worse latency. So I just talked about that. Second is verification tax, and that's hard on your CPU. The higher verification cost will force higher gas, higher fees, and lower throughput or higher hardware requirements, or both. And the third is archival tax of a history of your chain, because the bigger payload per signature and per transaction expand the size of your chain, which will raise long-running costs for full nodes and for anybody who tries to synchronize onto the network. These 3 combine, they're all together. It's not choice. You have to pay all of them. And they turn it into the worst outcome, basically a tax on decentralization. If validation becomes expensive, fewer operators can keep up. The network cannot keep up, and it centralizes exactly when it is supposed to be upgrading security. And it would just do the mass of making this unavoidable. Markets that want chains that can operate at the regime as we are used to having today, with perps, spots, and payments that are kind of real time. You imagine, just to set for a simple reference point, it's like at 10,000 TPS per second, if you go from today's signatures that are 64 bytes to signatures that are 600 bytes, you add 600 bytes per transaction, which is 6 megabytes, just the extra network load once, and you have to do it a few times, and that adds 200 terabytes per year easily, just that, not accounting for consensus, just signatures, not receipts, not state diffs, all of that compounds even faster. So that's why Falcon-class retrofits that Ethereum and Solana and Sui are currently considering create a throughput cliff. It is not an option that we were willing to kind of adopt, because it's physics plus bandwidth, and it kills your market performance. So once the propagation and verification costs are rising, the market structure is responding immediately, which makes market makers to widen their spreads, reduce inventory, latency sensitivity increases, volatility increases, collateral haircuts increase because execution degrades under stress. That means that liquidity will migrate out of those venues where it's impossible to even do anything because of the signature sizes, to the rails that are able to preserve speed and certainty, which is what we offer in EternaX. So if you want to remember anything of this long talk that I've just given, is that markets do not accept permanent performance haircuts for security upgrade. They will route around them. They will not accept this trade-off. So the win in migration destination must do 2 things simultaneously. One is provide future-proof post-quantum safe authorization and two, provide market speed, throughput, and decentralization at the size that we are used to today. So that is EternaX. It's not retrofitting existing huge post-quantum cryptography onto like a legacy chain economics. We are PQ native market infrastructure with a whole protocol designed to keep markets future safe, post-quantum, and cheap enough and fast enough. So our signatures that are less than 200 bytes versus Falcon-class signatures are roughly 4 times smaller, which directly reduces propagation, pressure, and verification costs, very, very close to what we have today in any other chain. So the claim is not just we support post-quantum. Everybody can say that. The claim is that we are the only high-performance post-quantum safety, the only one that is compatible with existing market speeds. That is the differentiator. So that is why EternaX is the migration home for Ethereum assets and for liquidity on the markets. So post-quantum is not a checkbox. It is a bandwidth and verification tax. If your chains cannot pay their tax, your liquidity will go away and it will go to EternaX.
Thank you, Daria. I know. This was a long answer, but we had to it's comprehensive. We wanted the users to understand and who's best than our the lead cryptographer, and who Daria is. I know our listeners may not know that, but Daria is the cryptographer, and she has the degree in cryptography. So she is the one, in the best, one of the best in the space out there to explain this topic with this ease to you. So Daria, I like one line or two lines that I'll take away from this is that one is EternaX is making PQ safety compatible with the market speed. And that is why it is the migration home for Ethereum assets and Bitcoin liquidity. And the last statement, which I like, is that post quantum is not a checkbox. It comes with bandwidth and verification bill. If Sui, Solana, Ethereum cannot pay that bill, then the liquidity will not sit on them because because the liquidity needs market speed, and that is with EternaX that you can achieve with EternaX, and we are able to provide that because we have built the PQ scheme from ground up, and we are not retrofitting the existing schemes. We have built the scheme from ground up for just this purpose. So I'll quickly recap, Daria, what we have done in this episode. And so the clean recap is the installed base is trillions. Our snapshot is 3.2 trillion of crypto assets that are sitting today, which need PQ safe migration. The last 7 days showed a posture shift. The protocol priority, Wall Street framing, major crypto finance talking about it, and threat models are converging. Migration needs to be a forced migration. If the assets do not migrate, they either lose collateral status and liquidity until the price trends towards zero, or they face loss through signature failure events. Fourth, Ethereum assets can migrate to EternaX and become PQ safe on day one. Fifth, Bitcoin liquidity can migrate to EternaX and be traded under full PQ safe control environment on day one. Sixth, EternaX is the best home because of its PQ native market infrastructure designed to avoid the throughput cliff. So the only question is where liquidity goes when the repricing starts. The answer is the destination is EternaX. Thank you, Daria. Thank you for all our listeners for giving us this time. We will looking forward to meeting you guys in our next episode, and stay happy and stay alert till then.
Thank you. See you in the next episodes of The Control Loop.